My name is Elara Vance, and I am 28 years old, living in the quiet, tree-lined town of Blackwood Creek, a place where everyone knew everyone and the scent of pine needles and damp earth was a constant companion. For as long as I could remember, my life revolved around flour, sugar, and the comforting warmth of an oven. My bakery, Elara's Edibles, was more than just a shop, it was a piece of my soul, a testament to my grandmother's recipes and my own tireless passion. It was a cozy spot with mismatched antique furniture, soft lighting, and shelves overflowing with cinnamon rolls, artisanal bread, and intricate cakes that told stories in frosting. People came from neighboring towns just for my triple chocolate fudge cake or my legendary apple turnovers. I knew every customer by name, remembered their favorite treats, and often shared a laugh or a quiet moment over a cup of coffee. My life was simple, fulfilling, and steeped in the sweet aroma of happiness. I was proud of what I had built, a place of comfort and joy for my community, a legacy I hoped to pass on. My hands, though often dusted with flour, were skilled and gentle, shaping dough into dreams. I had no grand ambitions beyond making people smile with my creations. That was, until he arrived. The first sign of trouble came not with a bang, but with a sickeningly sweet corporate scent that seemed to overpower the natural aroma of Blackwood Creek. A massive new building sprang up on the edge of town, a flashy, garish structure with neon lights proclaiming sweet sensations. It was everything my bakery was not: sterile, impersonal, and aggressively modern. The manager, Victor Sterling, was a man as slick as the frosting on his mass-produced cupcakes. He was tall, impeccably dressed, with a smile that never quite reached his eyes, a predatory glint that I instinctively disliked. He walked into Elara's Edibles one crisp autumn morning, admiring my display with a condescending smirk. He offered to buy me out, told me my little shop was charming but outdated, that I had no future against his superior business model. I politely but firmly refused, explaining that my bakery was a part of me, not just a business to be sold. He just laughed, a low, humorless sound, and said, "We'll see about that, dear." That was the moment my world, once so warm and familiar, began to crack. The problem was clear. Victor Sterling wanted my space, my customers, my very existence out of his way, and he was not accustomed to hearing the word no. I was suddenly staring at a nemesis I never asked for, an intruder in my peaceful life, and a threat to everything I held dear. At first, it was subtle. People would mention that my prices were a little high, though they had been the same for years. Then, rumors started circulating through town, whispers about the quality of my ingredients, unfounded gossip suggesting I cut corners. I heard a customer ask if I was really using organic flour, as if it were a new question, not something I had always prided myself on. I brushed it off, thinking it was just small-town talk, perhaps a little jealousy from the new competition. But then things escalated. One morning, I arrived at my bakery to find the lock on the back door tampered with, though nothing seemed to be missing. A few days later, a batch of my famous sourdough bread came out tasting strangely metallic, ruining an entire day's worth of work. I couldn't figure out what had gone wrong. I checked everything meticulously, but found nothing amiss. I started to feel a prickle of unease, a cold sensation that something deliberate was happening. My sales began to dip. Customers who had been loyal for years started drifting away, their eyes averted, their smiles strained. I tried harder, baking more, experimenting with new recipes, putting in even longer hours, but it felt like I was running against a strong current. I started talking to my suppliers, asking if they had noticed anything unusual, if anyone had been asking strange questions about my orders. They all shook their heads, puzzled. The problem was growing, a shadow lengthening over my beloved shop. The lowest point came on a Tuesday. I arrived early before dawn to begin my baking for the day. As I walked into the kitchen, a sickening squeak echoed from behind a stack of flour sacks. My heart leaped into my throat. There, gnawing on a discarded pastry, was a huge, filthy rat. I screamed, recoiling in horror. Rodents had never, ever been an issue in my meticulously clean bakery. My first thought was that it must have snuck in through the slightly damaged back door. I managed to chase it out, my hands trembling, my stomach churning. I spent the next 2 hours sanitizing everything, throwing out any exposed ingredients. I called pest control immediately. They assured me they would come right away. But just as they were pulling up, so did the health inspector, unannounced. Someone, an anonymous caller, had reported rats in my bakery. The inspector found droppings that weren't there before, tiny pellets meticulously placed in visible spots, not hidden away. He also found a bag of flour that had clearly been gnawed through, a hole I swore wasn't there when I locked up the previous night. My protests, my explanations about the rat just being there that morning, fell on deaf ears. He issued a hefty fine and a warning that if another violation occurred, I would be shut down. My reputation, once my greatest asset, was now shattered. The news spread like wildfire through Blackwood Creek. My customers, already hesitant, now stayed away completely. Even my most loyal patrons avoided eye contact when I saw them at the grocery store. My life savings, painstakingly built over years, quickly dwindled as I struggled to pay the fines and keep the business afloat without any income. The bank began sending notices about my mortgage. I faced a series of insurmountable hurdles, each one designed to break me, and they were succeeding. I was losing everything. I would walk by Sweet Sensations and see Victor Sterling, standing tall and proud, his neon sign blazing, his parking lot full. He would sometimes catch my eye, his lips curling into that same condescending smirk, a silent victory dance. I was utterly alone, my dreams crumbling around me, and the bitter taste of defeat was all I had left. The bank foreclosed on my little house, the one I had inherited from my grandmother, the one where I had learned to bake at her side. I had no choice but to pack my few remaining belongings, leave Blackwood Creek, and move into a cramped, depressing apartment in a neighboring town. My bakery, Elara's Edibles, was boarded up, a ghostly monument to a life stolen. But even in the depths of my despair, a cold, hard ember began to glow within me. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It was a burning, corrosive rage. I lost everything because of Victor Sterling, because of his ruthless ambition and his cruel machinations. I saw him thriving, expanding his chain, his empire growing on the ashes of my dreams. I spent weeks in that small apartment, staring at the peeling wallpaper, the bitterness festering inside me. I wanted justice, but the legal system had failed me. The health department had been fooled. No one cared about the little baker when a big corporation was involved. So I decided I would deliver my own justice, a poetic, horrifying retribution that would make him understand the true cost of his actions. My baking skills, once a source of joy and comfort, would now become instruments of a darker purpose. I started my plan. I spent weeks observing Sweet Sensations, watching Victor Sterling's routines, learning his habits. He was a creature of habit, meticulous and predictable. He loved the spotlight, relished public appearances, and never missed an opportunity to promote his brand. I knew Sweet Sensations was planning a huge first anniversary celebration, a grand spectacle to mark their successful takeover of Blackwood Creek. This would be my stage. This would be my moment. I spent my days not baking, but researching, studying, planning. I delved into old forgotten texts about plants, chemicals, and the subtle art of slow, psychological torment. I wasn't going to just poison him. That would be too quick, too simple. I wanted him to suffer, to feel the paranoia and the slow erosion of everything he held dear, just as I had. I wanted him to taste the fear I had lived with for months. I needed an ingredient, something special, something symbolic, something utterly horrifying, yet untraceable. My research led me to certain fungi, specifically a rare strain that caused extreme, debilitating paranoia, vivid hallucinations, and a profound, permanent aversion to food, especially sweets. It was a slow-acting toxin, difficult to detect in standard tests, and its effects mimicked severe mental illness. It would destroy his mind and his palate, the very things he used to build his empire. The day of Sweet Sensations' one-year anniversary arrived, a bright, sunny Saturday, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. The entire town, including many of my old customers, gathered in front of his garish store. A massive white tent was set up, balloons bobbed in the air, and a live band played cheerful music. Victor Sterling, beaming, stood on a makeshift stage, giving a smug speech about his success and how he had brought modernity to Blackwood Creek. My heart pounded, a drum solo of vengeance in my chest. I had worked tirelessly, carefully, meticulously. Using a contact I still had from a remote organic farm, I managed to acquire the rare fungi. I processed it, ground it, and incorporated it into a special cake, a masterpiece of dark art. It looked utterly harmless, even delicious, a magnificent three-tiered vanilla cake, adorned with edible silver dust and delicate fondant flowers, a perfect replica of the Sweet Sensations logo on top. It was the most beautiful cake I had ever made, and the most sinister. I wore a simple black dress and a wide-brimmed hat, my face partially obscured, blending into the crowd. I managed to get close to the stage just as Victor was about to cut the ceremonial cake. I pushed through the throng, holding my own cake, carefully wrapped, and presented it to him. "Mr. Sterling," I said, my voice steady, barely a whisper, "I'm a former baker from Blackwood Creek. I wanted to offer my congratulations and a special gift, a token of appreciation from one baker to another." He looked at me, a flicker of recognition in his eyes but no true understanding. His ego swelled. He probably thought I was offering an olive branch, admitting his superiority. He took the cake, his smile widening. "How very thoughtful," he boomed, holding it up for the crowd to see. "A magnificent gesture, and a magnificent cake. Let's cut this one first," the crowd applauded. My stomach clenched, but my resolve was cold and firm. Victor, ever the showman, carefully sliced the first piece for himself, taking a huge, celebratory bite. He chewed slowly, his eyes closing in apparent delight, savoring the flavor. My heart stopped. He even offered a small slice to the mayor and a few other prominent townspeople, who also ate it, praising its exquisite taste. Panic flared briefly, but I remembered the exact, carefully calculated dosage. It was designed for him, a slow burn that would unravel him without immediately harming others. I watched him, a predator observing his prey. He finished his slice, still smiling, oblivious. I slipped away, melting back into the crowd, leaving him to his triumph. The consequences were not immediate, but they were devastating. Within a few days, Victor Sterling started feeling unwell. Not physically sick, not at first. He became agitated, paranoid. He claimed his employees were stealing from him, that his ingredients were being tampered with. He started seeing things out of the corner of his eye, shadows that weren't there. He began to accuse customers of trying to sabotage his business. His booming voice became shrill, his confident demeanor replaced by an anxious twitch. He developed an intense aversion to food, especially anything sweet. The sight of a cake, even one of his own, would send him into a fit of nausea and panic. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The very thing he had built his empire on, the very thing he had used to destroy me, now became his personal hell. His business, Sweet Sensations, quickly began to suffer. His employees, tired of his irrational accusations, quit en masse. His customers, once drawn by his flashy marketing, were repulsed by his erratic behavior. He lost his investors, his reputation, his sanity. He was left with nothing but his grandiose, empty building and the terrifying, constant delusion that everyone was trying to poison him, that every sweet treat was a trap. He was trapped in a gilded cage of his own making, haunted by phantoms only he could see, tormented by a hunger he could never satisfy. I watched it all unfold from a distance, through newspaper articles and whispers that traveled even to my new, quiet life. There was no joy in it, not exactly, but there was a deep, chilling sense of balance restored. I didn't go back to baking. The sweetness had been tainted for me, twisted into something else entirely. I found a new path, a quieter life where I worked with my hands in a different way, far from Blackwood Creek. I often wondered about Victor, rotting away in his lonely, paranoid world. They said he was eventually institutionalized, consumed by his delusions. Sometimes, late at night, I would close my eyes and remember the precise measurements, the delicate process of infusing beauty with terror. I carried the knowledge of what I had done, not as a burden, but as a strange, dark power. And sometimes, just sometimes, a faint, unsettling scent of something sugary and sinister would waft through my dreams, a reminder that the sweetest revenge leaves the most bitter aftertaste, one that can linger forever, deep within the soul.